In late October of 1796, Catherine the Great, Empress of Russia, was lying fast asleep in her royal chambers. However, not for long. Several of her knight servants, having just passed the royal throne room, were surprised to see the Tsarina's chamber door closed. Concerned, one of the servants entered the room to find Catherine in bed and proceeded to wake her with greatly disturbing news. That moments ago they had seen her sitting on her throne. Jolting up in utter disbelief, the Tsarina raced to the throne room only to find herself seated in front of her. A state of uncanny terror rushed down her spine as she ordered her guards to fire. However, this unknown double was left unscathed, and the rest of what happened is unknown. Several weeks later, Catherine the Great would die under unexplained and highly debated circumstances. A death omen? A physical entity? Or something else? Join us tonight on Into the Portal as we investigate the bizarre phenomena of the doppelganger.
Hello, and welcome back into the portal. I'm your host, Amber Ray.
And I'm Andrew McKay. And today we are on episode 6, and we're coming at you guys with the bizarre phenomena of the doppelganger.
Very mysterious.
So, Amber's the one who kind of turned me on to this subject. It didn't jump out at me right away when you brought it up.
I don't even know why I got on that huge tangent.
You ended up on a tangent there, didn't you?
Yeah, it was like 2 days where I just was hitting it hardcore, and then I actually had a little bit of my own personal doppelganger experience, which we can talk about later on in the episode.
Right.
But that was kind of freaky. Anyways, yeah. So, we want to start with some origins, like we'd like to do here. And
we always like to give some history to
give some context.
Yeah.
Right.
And then obviously, we broke this down in the show description, but there's been a lot of historical figures that have seen their doppelgangers, and there's lots of different variations of what it actually is.
Exactly. All throughout human history. It's awesome. And then also, it's inspired countless literary works that are, some of them are just classics that you would know right away. Others are a little bit more obscure, but just as fascinating. So yeah, really excited about this topic. So anyways, I guess we can start off with the origins of the word itself.
Sure.
Because while the concept has existed for basically since human history has been around, this is a relatively recent term. Right. And it was coined in the 1700s. It was 1796.
Right.
From a German dude. His name was John Paul, a.k.a. Johann Paul Richter. I guess he wrote under
different
a pen name.
Right.
Yeah, so he was a novelist, and essentially he was a little bit obsessed with the term. Or no, sorry, I'm thinking of the writer. Or sorry, not the writer, the artist that did that crazy painting, how they met themselves. And that, again, was a huge inspiration for this episode.
Okay.
Yeah, that was by a guy named Dante Gabriel Rossetti. So, again, same sort of era, I believe. This was done in, well, no, it was a century later, but we're getting off on a huge tangent, of
already.
course.
That's okay.
Yes.
But the word actually, directly translates in German to double-goer.
Right.
Correct?
Yes.
And so it's, but it didn't actually become associated with the idea of, a double or an evil double or anything like that until, like you said, until it was coined later on.
What do you mean, the actual concept or the...
the actual use of it in, popular culture and, things like that.
Oh, well, yeah. We're going to go through some manifestations and different terminology for this. I guess the first one would come from ancient Egypt, which, we're back in the desert.
Holy moly, we're
Just
back.
For a second, though.
Just for a sec. Yep.
Yeah. So this kind of relates to the Egyptian concept of the soul. They kind of divided it into 5 different parts. So I'm not going to list them all, but basically the one that's most relevant for our discussion is the Ka. So it's just spelled K-A. And so the Ka is actually a tangible spirit double that has the same memories and feelings as the person to whom the counterpart belongs. But essentially it lives on after the person.
Right.
So it kind of has, like a little bit of immortal qualities to it.
Okay.
It doesn't have any nefarious connotations, though. It's just a spiritual double.
Okay. So that's different, obviously, than the later.
Exactly. It was almost considered just like more of a life force, I would say.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, because when I was looking at that, like, there's lots of hieroglyphs where it is, like, a corpse or a burial or whatever it might be, and then there's, like, sort of, like, the floating above. It's like, it isn't
in
like
some depictions, you see like, if the person's alive and they're standing, you see a miniature person's next to them. That's supposed to symbolize the ka.
Okay.
And then in other depictions, they actually have another hieroglyph that looks like, we're going to put this in our show notes, but it looks like just two arms at a 90-degree angle pointing up.
Okay.
Yeah. So very basic, but like the actual depiction of it. But essentially, so the ka was represented by two arms outstretched to ward off evil. Again, it basically, I already touched on this, the idea that it could be a drawing of a very little person standing next to a normal-looking person. But yeah, very interesting. The ka.
So it's just basically like that is one of the earliest origins of basically just the concept of like the soul and something separate.
Exactly. It's almost like just an element of duality.
Right. Yeah, dualism for sure.
Yes. So then moving on from that, we kind of we go into the era of Zoroastrianism, which you can kind of just loosely define as like the very earliest religion that is monotheistic, so one god.
Right.
The Egyptians obviously worshipped a whole bunch of them.
And we touched on Zoroastrianism briefly in the Zura episode, part 2, I think it was.
Oh, was it? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I mean, they sort of...
6 episodes and we already forgot.
6 episodes. Yeah, that wasn't that long ago. We should probably remember. But, so moving into sort of monotheistic religion and the ideas on basically good and evil.
Yeah. So I have a quote here. This is from Wikipedia. But basically, they say it is one of the oldest extant religions that combines cosmogonic dualism and eschatological monotheism. So let me explain all of those long words.
Okay.
So cosmogonic dualism refers to the idea of binary forces in the universe, so oppositional forces.
Right.
That form an antagonistic relationship. Monotheism refers to the idea of, the single all-powerful God, and then eschatological refers to the end of days.
Oh dear.
Yeah, it's doomsday.
Doomsday.
So, it basically has the roots of what I would say is, like a lot of religions that we see today.
Right.
Including Christianity and others, obviously.
Obviously, this would develop later on into, like, the actual, like, physical places of heaven and hell in in Catholicism and whatever else.
So the whole story, I guess, of like, combining this concept of dualism would be this idea of Ahura Mazda, who was the supreme lord, supreme being. Mazda. I was like, oh, that's where the car company got it from. And how there was some guy, or sorry, not some guy, his like twin brother or whatever, and he was the evil counterpart. So what was his name again? Oh, right. It was Angra Mainyu.
Right, okay, I have this here too.
So these guys, co-eternal representatives of good and evil. So, like, the idea of an evil inverse comes into play.
Right.
And then this gets further expounded on in, well, not so much in Greek mythology. We kind of skipped over that one, because I did see a reference to the story of Narcissus, but that's just a dude falling in love with his own reflection, and that's not exactly the actual same thing. Double that's manipulating him, or an ill omen, that type of thing. So... Yeah,
and obviously, like, there were Greek philosophers that touched on sort of aspects of the doppelganger when we get into sort of the psychology sort of theories on what a doppelganger is, and like Plato and Aristotle and those types of guys like were the earliest, or not the earliest, but they kind of like set the stage for Freud kind of later on and things like that, with like looking at the self and how there was like the double could be like, thoughts, like, like deep subconscious thoughts or whatever coming up. But it's like nothing directly tied into like evil doubles or evil twins or the doppelganger from ancient Greece that I
physical manifestations.
Or physical manifestation.
Concept.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, cool. Yeah. So, did you have anything else for the Zoroastrian bit?
No, I mean, that was just sort of one we obviously wanted to touch on, just because it was the earliest monotheistic religion, and that is the origin point of this very, very, very sort of rudimentary dualism that would evolve into the super complex stuff we see in all religions, whether it's good and evil or whether it's
not that
other binaries.
It's so much directly related to the cultures that we're going to talk about.
No.
But again...
But similar, though, just like historically.
Yeah.
So then, ancient Greece, not a ton. Yeah. You found a little bit from Norse mythology, right?
Just a tiny bit. Well, this one was interesting because it is a ghostly being that is a double or a mimic, but there isn't so much a nefarious aspect. It's more so...
Doesn't kill you.
No, it's almost like an echo is kind of how I interpreted it. So essentially, it's like...
What's it called?
It's a preceder of the person as well. And sometimes it's not even seen, it's just heard. Like, say, like, you're at your house and you know your significant other's going to be home at a certain time. And so you're in the living room or wherever, and you hear them come through the door, take off their boots, maybe wash their hands or put their coat away, and you hear all those familiar sounds, and then you go to say hello, and then you realize they're not there. And then they come through the door minutes after.
I see.
So that kind of thing.
So it can be sort of more like just experiential, not necessarily like you see an exact
doppelganger. It can be just heard. It can be seen, though, and most times...
Sorry, did we say what this is called? I just scrolled down here.
So the Vardolger.
Vardolger.
The Vardolger.
What a great... Didn't you come across that's like a lot of metal bands are named that?
Yeah, I think there's one that's currently on tour.
Really?
Yeah, I saw a lot of Googling around on
They're
them.
Norwegian or something, I guess?
Yeah.
Finnish?
Yeah, definitely.
They do have great death metal over there, that's for sure.
Yeah. You know what's interesting, too? Like, they're in Finnish folklore, there's another crossover with this, Vardolger, and it's kind of... It has this another name that's just...
hard to pronounce?
Yeah,
Give it a go.
It's the Etiainen. Anyways, it has like an A with a double dot over it, so I'm not really sure what that is.
I'm just going to give you a little finger clap here for that attempt. That's a very valiant attempt.
But anyways, yeah, it is kind of similar in the way that it's, again, not malicious, but it precedes the person much like a Vardolger does.
Interesting.
And it's almost more so a spiritual guardian or some sort of like a genie. I know we touched on the djinn really briefly in our Zazura theories, and that to me was more so an evil connotation. This is more helpful.
Yeah.
it's gonna not try and murder you every step you take. Yeah.
So that definitely differs from a lot of the other sort of cultural references.
Yeah, so those two, again, those are they're almost in their own camp. Mm-hmm. And then you get the more sinister ones that are...
Right.
Yeah, you get... Anyways, yeah, so we got Celtic mythology, and this is also present in Norman French folklore.
Okay.
The Ankou.
The Ankou.
The Ankou, spelled... Well, I'm not...
These words are cool.
I know, right? I love it. But, yeah, so this guy, again, is definitely a malevolent... oh my god, I can't even
Malevolent.
There we go. Malevolent entity. Oh my god. I'm having an off day. The harbinger of death.
Harbinger. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's never a good thing. That's...
No, I didn't actually find any specific instances. It was kind of just like a brief mention.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. What did you come across?
I honestly, every time I was searching Celtic mythology, I just kept coming back over and over and over again to the Irish folklore of the fetch.
Ooh, yes.
So, I mean, they're very similar. So basically in Irish folklore and just in sort of... It transfers over into, the rest of the British Isles as well. But the fetch is described as... usually as a spectral double of a living human whose appearance is regarded as extremely ominous, and so it's usually like these other ones we've sort of touched on, or we're going to again more so, but it'll kill you. If you see yourself, it's not good.
Okay.
It does sort of have some similarities to the Norse one, the Vardolger, in the sense that depending on the time of day, apparently, the fetch, if you see a fetch early in the morning, that could actually potentially be a sign that you'll have a long life, or it could be interpreted
a
in
long road ahead.
Right, it's at the beginning of the day.
Yeah.
So it's a good sign, whereas late at night or other times it's
or
less.
When the sun's dying and the light starts to disappear.
And so that sort of ties to the same thing. It's like good, evil, light, dark, night, day. All these kind of
so many binaries.
Dualities and binaries, and it's just it all ties together. So that was an interesting one from Irish folklore, and that transfers over sort of into Scottish too, but you had a different one there, for the Scots.
There was a few different things I came across. They kind of the Scots refer to doppelgangers as just co-walkers. It's kind of like a phantasmic sort of figure that is actually able to separate from its person and perform actions independently, whether or not those are harmful or not, kind of depends. Again, though, they also have the concept of the changeling and the idea of these trolls, or like these fairies that actually, they steal children, they steal babies right out of their cribs. And we had an awesome image of that I posted earlier on our Insta. So if you haven't seen that, go check it out. So basically trolls come in and they steal these children, replace them with things known as changelings. So in that sense, you can interpret that as a form of double. Right?
Totally.
Yeah, so...
That's freaky, too. Isn't that totally freaky?
It's creepier and creepier the more you come across these similarities that are, say, described in different terms, but they're all describing the same thing. Yeah. It reminds me so much of, like, the Skinwalker and, like, say, like... Yeah. You know, there's so many things that
these cross over and there's subtle variations, but they're all there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More similarities than differences.
Yeah, totally.
So that was another really cool one. I really like the Scottish version.
And it's mentioned, that Scottish version, like, it's mentioned in a ton of, like, we have a literary section that we'll get to, but, like, it started really early on, like, early in sort of folklore writings and stuff, like, both in Scottish and Irish, like, you know, early, like, you know, late 18th century, early 20th century, lots of different works. Michael Bannum's Gothic story, The Fetches, that's 1825. That was like a really famous work. That was one of the earlier ones to include the fetch.
That was from like an anthology, right? Called The Tales of the O'Hara Family?
I believe it was, yeah. Yeah.
So I really want to read that.
I know, right? It's the tough thing about releasing weekly episodes. We try to cram reading books. Yeah. But it's really tough to obviously read a book in a week.
If something doesn't have a preview on Google Books, I usually just skip over it. Like, not that I want to, but like, just for the sake, I can't just order a bunch of books from A Books like I did, when was that? I ordered a book for our first episode on, like, Christmas, or just before Christmas. It didn't arrive until literally a week ago. So that was my experience with A Books. Obviously, there's services like Amazon and whatever else that are a little bit better, but I do like A Books, because they have great prices. Right. You just have to wait.
Indeed. Anyway, we digress.
Sorry, yep. This episode is not brought to you by A Books, by the way. So that Gothic story, that is a huge theme, hey, in Gothic fiction.
Definitely.
I love that. When I took that class in university, I was like all over that, and we have some examples, but we want to talk about some real life cases first, I think, hey?
I think so. I mean, that was just definitely sort of a brief historical overview, and we could have gone into more depth. But
definitely.
You don't really need to know much more. I mean, the basics of this are that it varies culture to culture, but that typically it's not a good thing to see your double.
It's not a good sign. And then also within that, if someone else sees your double, it's usually a bad sign for the person that the double appears as, but it's not necessarily fatal. It more so comes into play if you see your own double.
Right. That's right.
Yes, and then that is more so fatal, especially if you encounter this double more than once.
Indeed. And that's important, because that comes into play in sort of these real life stories that we're about to give you guys here. Yeah.
So maybe on that note, I'll just start with Percy Shelley, because he was one that was very...
That's a good one to start off with.
Yeah. If for those of you who aren't aware, Percy Shelley was also an author and a poet. He was the husband of Mary Shelley, the very famous author of Frankenstein. And so this guy...
The original Frankenstein.
The original, right, yeah, from the 19th century. And so he had numerous incursions with his own double, in which he would actually have conversations. And in one circumstance, the double asked him how long he intended to remain content. Very creepy. And he was always alone when he saw this guy, apparently. So some people might think, well, you know, maybe he's schizophrenic.
Right. But the thing with him was that, like, he was sort of, people liked him. Like, he was upstanding. And he didn't seem to, from anything I could look at, that I could find, that he showed any indication of, like, schizophrenia or things like that. Something along those lines.
Yeah. You never know. He actually did write... There were some themes of the double in his Prometheus Unbound that he wrote. I haven't actually had time to read that, so I don't know
what
the
a title
specifics.
That is, eh?
Right? I love that title. It's pretty epic. But again, a classic too. Like, I've definitely come across that in our studies before. Yeah. But this guy, so he's kind of testing the fates. I think he had at least 3 incursions with his own double. Okay. And it kind of culminated with a tragic boating accident. He ended up perishing at the age of 27. So.
Unfortunate.
Yeah. Didn't end well for him. Poor Mary. I wonder
how long she lived for. That's one of those fun, kind of interesting things, though, where it's like, it's supposedly a harbinger of death when you see yourself, but most of the accounts we've looked at, it's like you end up dying in a way that's either unexplainable or sort of obscure, you
or
know what
tragic.
I mean? Like, or extremely tragic, I guess. At least the extremely tragic ones, it's like, you know what happened. You know what I mean? Like if someone just like dropped dead after claiming to see their double, but with no indication why, like that's more creepy to me.
You know, yeah, that's totally, like, what if it was like the basilisk, where you look at it, you catch its eye, and you're dead. You're on the spot. Like,
yeah.
You're out of here.
You're out of here.
You're out of there. Anyways.
Yeah, Bob's Burgers references, yeah.
Such a good episode.
Okay.
So after Shelley, we definitely have some more. What was the one that stood out to you the most?
Well, I think despite the fact that there wasn't a ton of information on it, I really enjoyed the Catherine the Great story, which is obviously
our
why
opener.
I chose to do it as the opener. Yeah, but like there was like not a ton of information on it at all. But it sounded like a story that would happen for Catherine the Great, just because of the type of lady that she supposedly was. Like super like outlandish and boisterous and all these things. And if anybody was gonna like charge into their own throne and be like, screw this double, shoot him right now, you know
the
what I mean?
imposter.
It sounds like it could be true. And then she did die. I mean, if you believe the story, she did die several weeks later.
Right.
There's debate about exactly how she died. Some of them are pretty like
wildly inappropriate versions that we won't touch on here.
No, exactly. Like you can Google it and take a look.
She was a very precocious, rambunctious kind of a lady, wasn't she? She liked to have some.
She had many.
She liked to have male company around. From what I read.
Yes. And so obviously there's a lot of theories on how she died, like if she contracted a disease or whatever it may have been. But
did you get her age?
She was in her 60s. I think.
Wow.
Can't remember. But anyway, she just struck me as like one of the most famous ones. Like obviously Abe Lincoln's super famous and that's more recent, but like Catherine the Great, like for all that's
a pretty crazy sighting. You know, it's funny too because she a queen of Russia or a czar,
same thing.
Czarina, a leader of a country. Which corresponds to, or parallels, I guess you could say, Queen Elizabeth's own encounter with her double.
Right.
So obviously she was a bit earlier than Catherine the Great. When was she around again? It was like the 1500s or something.
Like this is one of the,
she was
where is this note here?
She was the daughter of Anne Boleyn. So Anne Boleyn was around the time of Louis VIII.
Oh God, that would have been early.
So that would have been, anyways... We can all those at home.
All the history classes we took and our professors are they're.
But anyway, so she actually encountered her double when she was she was a little bit older. I think she was in her 60s or 70s.
Yep.
She ended up, I think she walked into her bedchambers and saw herself laying in repose as if she was dead, and she was like quite ghostly, right? Like it was quite it was almost like a
pale skin and all that.
Exactly. Yeah. And she ended up dying soon afterwards as well. I think it was within a matter of weeks. So
just bizarre.
Yeah, we'll get into the theories
I'm
about it.
I'm already just itching to get into the theories because I have so much to say on all these.
Like, is this like their own mentality, like being like, you're gonna die?
Well, is it like are you witnessing your own premonition? Like you have this in your head, and this is like, it's not actually a physical manifestation that someone else in the room could reach out and touch, but it's like you see it because it's some sort of it's a premonition, or is it actually like something physical? Like, do you manifest it through your thought just because of whatever reason, because you're under extreme stress or because of whatever it may be?
Yeah.
The power of the human mind.
And like Queen Elizabeth again, like she was a very sound of mind person. She was not one to dick around and be like, no, you know, I'm just gonna dabble in the paranormal for a second here and then get back to business. Like, no, she had a freaking country to run.
Totally. Most of these people that we come across, not just for doppelgangers, but for all kinds of different things throughout history, they're oftentimes accounts from credible people. Like even like we touched on like a Saint Germain when we were talking about alchemy. And it's like the people who claim to know him were credible people. You know what I mean? Or whatever it may be. It's not like the town drunks that are coming out here and be, I saw my double and he stole my horse. Like, you know what I mean? So, I don't know. It's kind of interesting that way historically, how it's a lot of the time is like, you know, well-known figures.
Yes, people of note. But there was people that were quite ordinary.
Oh, for sure, too, as well. Absolutely.
And that, to me, well...
This happens to hundreds of thousands of people.
I'm even thinking, off the top of my head, like I was listening to Monsters Among Us the other day, and he had a caller tell this account about how, like, I guess he was a mailman, and he ended up... he had a double, and he lived in a small town, and he had, I can't remember what kind of car it was, but it was a really noticeable type of car, like a souped up whatever, like bright yellow. You'd always know him if you saw him on the road. And essentially, he had a double that was like literally, but it was like the same sort of thing where it was like almost as if he didn't talk to anyone or didn't like respond to people yelling out or whatever.
Interesting.
And then I think it culminated with him actually encountering him. Eventually he did. And he was like, hey man, this is so weird, right? Like, and the double was like, it was almost like a Men in Black thing where the double was like totally just like, it just like glared at him or something and didn't respond and basically just like walked away. And then after that, he never saw it again.
Bizarre.
Yeah. We should get a hold of Derek Hayes and see if he can send us over that soundbite.
That's so funny too. We were out for dinner recently with some friends, and she was like, "Oh, there's somebody with the exact same name as you that's starting to come to the studio," and I was like, what do you mean? Like, it's like every time someone sees it on the list, they think it's you. And
then the weird part is she never met him.
No, she's never seen him.
Never seen him.
Could be another Andrew McKay out there.
What if they just assumed your identity?
Uh-oh.
You better check your credit cards.
Whatever, I only have $1,000 limit.
Basement life right here. Okay. But yeah, just on the note of like more normal people encountering doubles or being stalked by them or whatever, I think, do you want to mention Emily Sagie now?
Oh my god.
Because I was going to save her for last, but she's from the 1840s, and we have a few cases after that, so if we're going to continue on
this is this one is the spookiest one, so I think we should let's jump into it.
Yes, and I have a dramatic reading. Witnessed by nearly 50 persons, the students were intently working in their sewing class while another teacher sat at the front of the room reading a book. Outside the window, the students could see Emily working in the garden. The supervising teacher stood up and left the room. Seconds later, Emily walked in and sat in the empty chair. The students thought nothing of it until one gasped and pointed out the window where Emily was still working diligently in the garden. Two of the students stood up and approached the doppelganger, and being quite brave, reached out and touched it. They said it looked just like Emily Sagie in all aspects, except when they ran their hands through the entity. They said it felt empty, like the stuff cobwebs are made of. Later, Emily Sagie had told school officials that she indeed had been outside picking flowers in the garden. She had not seen the doppelganger. In fact, Emily never once saw her twin, but had, in fact, wished to herself that she was in the classroom supervising the sewing class. The school officials noted in their documentation that each time the doppelganger appeared to them, the real Emily appeared lethargic and listless.
All right, well, that was extremely creepy.
Indeed.
One of the I don't know if we actually mentioned it at the beginning there, but like, so she supposedly was a French school teacher.
She was a French school teacher teaching in like Eastern Europe somewhere. I can't remember the exact country.
Didn't she
like
bounced
Estonia
around a lot, right?
Yeah, that was the thing.
She lost jobs because of this.
The whole story was that the school was very curious as to why this woman hadn't had a job for more than a couple of years in one spot kind of thing. And so after she had been at the school for a while and they had encountered all these, like, basically everyone at school witnessed it. Except for her. Yeah, she was the only one. She would be up there lecturing in front of her students, and she would have her doppelganger mimicking her behind her, and, like, writing stuff on the board, and,
just absolutely bizarre.
Gesturing to the kids and all this stuff. And
actually, we found a really cool, it's like a 10-minute YouTube thing on Emily Sagie, so we'll include that on our YouTube channel, so you can take that link. There's a link for our YouTube channel on the website, so you can check that out later. But anyway, continue.
Cool. Yeah. So, I wasn't able to find any birth or death records for Emily Sagie.
Yeah, that was the thing.
I don't even know if I have the right spelling, though. That's the thing. Like, she is from the 1840s, is when the account is from, but
not necessarily ideal records kept, necessarily, depending on where she spent time, too. I mean, if she was bouncing all over the place. But you'd think that there would be birth records or something.
Something.
I mean, obviously...
This was just on Ancestry.com, so...
Yeah, I mean, it could
and I'm
be
not a paying member, so...
Yeah. I don't know. Cursory glance at Ancestry.com. I mean, it could be a spelling thing. By all accounts, she was definitely a real person. I mean, like, judging by the amount of information... I mean, not that that means anything. People can be made up. But it doesn't seem like it.
No. It's very curious, too, because she... Yeah, like we said, like, she never actually saw her doppelganger, but it would correspond to say things that she was thinking about or wanting to do or whatever. Like, the end of the quote was that she had wished herself that she was in the classroom. So, you know, in that sense, it's almost like a sense of psychic bilocation, perhaps.
Right, yeah, something weird like that.
Yeah, that, again, I say that now. We're going to talk about it. So we're jumping the gun as per usual, but anyways.
Yeah, that's typical of us, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I mean, I had a note here that I thought, well, we both talked about this, but like how this account has some similarities to the Doppelgänger, in the sense that it wasn't outright malicious, or there wasn't anything about it that, like, she never saw it, so she didn't get that uncanny feeling.
Right.
Other than that, when I obviously, like, you'd think you'd get that uncanny feeling when someone just, like, hey, I just saw you in the bathroom, and you'd be like, yeah.
So, yeah, the idea that it's not as malevolent, and then also the idea that it's mimicking her real-life actions, things that she would do, like, say, even, I know, like, this is just whatever, but say, her walking down the hall at school. Right. And things like that, or picking of the flowers. Like,
it's almost like it's like a trickster, this one seems like almost, or something, right? Or it's just almost something trying to... mess with her, but it's not like it's like
a poltergeist type of meddling.
Yeah,
a little bit,
exactly, like move your brush from one side of the room to the other kind of stuff, not like anything,
not like yeah anyways. So yeah, Emily says she was definitely one of my favorite accounts. We do have a couple more though. I think the next one would be the Goethe account, or Goethe. I don't even know. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. So anyways, this account comes from his own autobiography. So he claims to have met his doppelganger at the age of 22 when he was visiting a lady friend of his. And very, I don't know.
Very saucy.
Saucy
18th century
indeed.
saucy.
Yeah. But this doppelganger appeared before him, dressed in an outfit different than his own that he was wearing, and didn't acknowledge him at all. And it was kind of curious because a friend of his, an acquaintance, actually saw the same doppelganger further down the way. And then I guess the account goes that 20 years later or so, I don't know if it was 20, whatever, he ended up walking down that exact same lane, and then at the time he realized that he was wearing the exact same outfit that the doppelganger had been wearing in the previous circumstance.
Interesting.
So again, that's almost like a psychic manifestation, some sort of echo.
Like a premonition or some sort of a weird, or it's sort of funny. I always end up jumping back and forth between all sorts of different, like, other stories that are unrelated, but you know what that makes me think of?
What?
That makes me think of some of the Mothman stuff we've listened to, where it's like the description of somebody, you know, the window washer that's slightly higher up, his perspective is further down the road than the person on the road. They can see further ahead based on where they are.
Yes.
It's almost like these...
With the whole bridge accident and everything, and all those predictions that Keel was getting over the phone
John
and stuff.
Keel. So it's like a doppelganger. It reminds me of that in the sense that, like, when you see yourself in these circumstances, like the one you just mentioned, it's like, there's a premonition aspect to it, but it's almost like what you're seeing is that further view down the way.
Exactly.
Or it's just a piece of
whether
time.
Whether it's years or minutes or whatever.
Right.
And just to even add to that, Goethe had a second account of when, this was, I guess, probably, I don't know, in the same time frame. It was, again, in his autobiography. But essentially, there was an instance where he was walking down the street towards his home. So he's walking through the neighborhood, and he sees an acquaintance of his down the way. And he's wearing an outfit of Goethe's. So again, it's the clothes. You're like, what? Anyways, so when he arrived at his home, he found the same acquaintance he had seen wearing the outfit at his residence, wearing the clothes the same clothes.
Okay.
And so essentially his acquaintance said that he had taken the liberty of changing into ghosts after getting caught in the rain, soaking his own. So again, it was like, premonition, where he kind of was like, oh, you're here doing that, but actually you're probably in my house doing that, and I'm seeing you here. So psychic bilocation, and like you're saying, premonition. All in the paranormal realm here.
Yeah, that's in the paranormal category of our theories section.
Yeah. That was a really fun one, though. I like that. I'll go with. And
well,
he was
cool
the one that wrote
his...
Faust, hey?
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Dr. Faust.
Well, I mean, the cool thing about that one is it's in his own writings. You know what I mean? Where it's not like the Emily Sudgy, it's all secondhand source.
Right.
There's no primary sources involved, where she had a diary or something like that, where she was like, everyone at school is talking about this. You know, the next one we're going to get into, it's the same thing.
I feel like we're building up to this one.
Drum roll. I don't want to do a drum roll because we don't have a very good pop filter.
No. It's just going to sound awful for you guys.
But we're moving in to possibly the most famous historical figure to have witnessed their doppelganger, other than probably Catherine the Great, and that would be Abraham Lincoln.
I honestly think that Abe is more famous than Catherine.
He's definitely like more in the public consciousness, like,
especially in America. Right?
Well, yeah, we're in North America, definitely. Yeah, You're right. So, 16th president, I think it was. He was.
Yep.
16th president of the United States, and he apparently, obviously, we all know what happened to him. But give a little bit of background on his account.
I'm handing this one off to you.
You're handing it off to me?
I am.
Well, okay. So, let's see here. So, according to his account, it was relatively soon after he was elected. So, this was like 1860. So, he came home one day. He was working all day. Came home. He was getting himself together, after a long day of work, and he looked at himself in his bureau mirror. And he saw his own reflection, his double's reflection behind him.
Okay.
Nearly at full length, so almost the full head to toe. But he said that my face had two separate and distinct images. He noticed that although the images were nearly identical, one was a little bit... So there was different. He saw his double, one was slightly different. Slightly more pale.
It was the paleness.
Yeah, slightly more pale. What was it?
Did he say it was like 5 shades?
That's such a specific shades amount. Anyway.
Yeah.
I'm sure he wasn't like spending a lot of time tanning, so it would have been real pale.
I thought the interesting part was his wife's interpretation of it.
Yeah. But that was it. So he saw it in a mirror. He didn't see it directly. He saw it in a mirror. So that is a difference between some of the other ones.
And it does correlate to some of the accounts I saw where a lot of the times a doppelganger is seen in a crowd. It's seen at a distance.
Yes.
And it's often seen through glass.
Right. There's some sort of a divide.
Didn't X-Files do an episode on that too?
They did a recent one of their newer ones had doppelgangers in it, remember? The newest ones.
Yes. But they did an old school one too, I remember, where it was like, side note here, sorry people.
Yeah,
where it was,
tangent.
I think Scully was in a shop in one of the scenes, and then she ends up seeing it through the shop window.
Oh,
and then he
yeah.
takes off, and
that sounds really familiar.
Yeah, something to do with
We'll post the link. It's on Netflix, you guys can go find it.
Yeah, it's a fun one. It's probably from like season 2 or 3 or 4. The best seasons.
Yeah, pretty much.
So we never even got to Abe's wife's interpretation of that.
Yeah.
Did you want to tackle that one?
So, well, okay. I think you probably have some more detailed notes on it. I've just got like the little side thing here. His wife said, she was worried. She basically interpreted that he wouldn't make it past his first term.
Yeah.
Or past his second term. Like he would make it through his first term, but then not his second.
Mm-hmm. So it was definitely taken as a bad omen.
Yeah.
But yeah, she definitely correlated the degree of paleness with the time spent in office, which is weird. Because couldn't you just say equally, like, you're not going to make it through your first term? Like, what's to say Anyways.
Yeah, how do you correlate?
Maybe she was just trying to be really, like, positive for... Maybe it was near the election. She's like...
Being like, don't worry, you'll be fine for the first one, but you're gonna die in your second... or like, no.
Why would you even bother? Then I'd be like, you know what, I'm gonna go hide under a rock or something.
You know, these things make me wonder how much they knew. Like, I mean... Yeah, like Abe, like this was in the 1860s or whatever, and then Catherine the Great's was, whenever that was and all this, but it's like, what was their knowledge of doppelgangers? Mm-hmm. They obviously knew, like, what it was.
Yeah.
They described these things as doubles, like Abe Lincoln describes it as a double. He saw his doppelganger. But, like, I wish that we could have found, like, a direct, like, quote or something being, like, what his take on it was. Like, I was afraid, or I was this, I was that, because there's nothing that really said, like, that he was upset by it.
It was just from, his biographer.
I mean, obviously he seemed like the type of man that wouldn't be too... shaken by it.
Mm-hmm. Well, he obviously ended up running again and whatever, so he wasn't going to change his ways.
And of course, though, I mean, this matches up with, obviously, the same sort of demise that Percy Shelley met, in that it wasn't unexplainable, but it was
before their time.
And tragic, and definitely before his time.
Yeah.
Coincidence? Like, that's up for listeners to decide.
Yeah.
But yeah, another really interesting historical account, for sure.
Definitely.
Now, are we migrating into theories already here? Because...
that pretty much wraps it up for me for, like, more significant cases.
Oh, I think, right. More significant cases, and then we have some interesting sort of literary examples, correct?
We do. And I'm kind of saving that half for the theory section.
Cool.
Yeah. But first, we have a word from our fellow podcasters over at Graveyard Tales. Hosts Adam and Matt explore a plethora of fascinating paranormal topics, all with hilarious banter and lighthearted fun. So we highly recommend you check them out, and we're going to roll that tape.
Good evening, everybody, or morning or afternoon or whatever. My name is Adam.
And I'm Matt.
And we are Graveyard Tales. Now, if you like stories of ghosts, hauntings, the paranormal, preternatural, and the downright weird, and you enjoy a few laughs as well, then you should probably check us out.
Find us anywhere you get your podcast. Come join our Facebook group at Graveyard Tales Podcast, or on Twitter at GRVEY. Just go search Graveyard Tales.
That would be easier. We look forward to seeing you in the graveyard.
See you soon.
And we're back. So, we're just about ready to kick off our theories section, but we wanted to start off with some pop culture and literary references just because there were so many interesting ones, and they definitely help set the stage for the theories section.
Yeah.
So,
and they do have cultural implications as well.
Absolutely. This is what perpetuates these narratives and
crossovers into real life.
Definitely. I'd say like 90% of the things that inspire us are from fiction. Mm-hmm. And then they cross over into us looking for evidence in reality, like primary.
I kept kind of going back and forth. I'm like, yeah, do these real life examples inspire the fiction, or does the fiction inspire the real life examples? But
it's
the
a chicken
history,
and egg situation, man.
A little bit, yeah. The history in my mind makes it the first, where it's the real inspires the fiction. Totally. Which normally it's so funny when you're talking about sci-fi, especially. It's usually the fiction inspires the real, as far as scientific advances. But
I guess it depends what era you're looking in. You know what I mean? If you're looking in modern era, like last 30 years or something, then it's the latter. If you're looking at, 15th century, then I feel like it's maybe a mix of both. And if you're going even more ancient than that, then it's more historical. It's based off of what people saw, and then they reinterpret it or whatever. Yeah. You know what I mean?
And it gets reworked into like paintings and like all sorts of stuff. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but we're kicking off with some, literary references. Did you have any particular one that you wanted to mention right off the bat? I had a few cool ones.
You had that Edgar Allan Poe one, right?
Yeah.
That was a pretty cool one.
Yeah, so, what's funny? I actually didn't get a chance to read the short story. I've read a lot of other Edgar Allan Poe stuff, and he's definitely doom and gloom and creepy things that we're into. But William Wilson. So anybody out there who's read this will be familiar with this, but essentially it's a short story that explores the idea of doppelgangers or doubles. except it is a little bit different. So it has this reversal of the traditional evil twin, per se. I'm doing air quotes here. In the story, one of the doubles is amoral, but his wicked schemes are always being unmasked by his virtuous identical.
So the foil is the good one.
Yes. So it's flipped around.
Interesting.
It's a little safer to see your double in this particular story. So that's kind of an interesting reinterpretation of it.
I like that. I haven't actually read that one either.
Yeah, we'll
that's
have
from
to get around to it.
1839.
Right.
So a lot of these works actually did come about in this time frame,
Similar
which
era.
you can just say loosely is the era of Victorian/Gothic fiction. That was kind of, the high point of that.
Yeah.
You do see things like Robert Louis Stevenson's The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, that type of thing.
And that ties into this too.
Yes.
You know?
Of course.
Yeah.
That's why I'm bringing it up.
Well, I know, but it's like all these things that I didn't really think of, but because it isn't.
It's the duality of the self.
Yeah, exactly.
The
It's
idea
not a
that
direct
monstrosity lies within one's own being.
But that's what's so bizarre about the doppelganger is because, like, when you see it as a harbinger of death, it's this. What did you just call it? How did you just describe it? It's like it's this evil thing,
An
but it
inverse.
but it looks just like you. Whereas in Jekyll and Hyde, it's like looks like you and looks like a monster.
That's true, actually.
You know what I mean? So that's an interesting
the physical
difference.
manifestation. I guess more so on the lines of like mind-body dualism, that type of thing is kind of what I was. But and then also the evil twin, So there's so many like sub themes within the idea of the double,
Right.
And again, like we even referenced Hans Christian Andersen's that fairy tale he wrote called The Shadow. We use that as a little bit of a hype up kind of thing, but that again isn't even actual. Like it is a double in the sense that it is part of his self. To me, that almost corresponds more to the Ka than to the doppelganger.
Yeah.
But so his shadow ultimately takes on a life of his own and becomes the master. And he totally by the end of the short story he betrays the learned man as he's described throughout the whole thing.
Okay.
Which is kind of an ironic reference by the end of the story.
Right.
But I really love that one. And we are going to include that in the resources in our additional reading. I have a full PDF from a website, so I'm going to include that because it's really fun. It's
cool.
it's not even like 5 pages.
Awesome.
So.
We'll record include the
it's snackable content.
We'll include the William Wilson short story as well. We'll find a link for that and include the Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah, and there's also other references like Fyodor Dostoevsky's The Double. I haven't read that one, but I love Dostoevsky. He's classic, man.
Yeah, you do love it.
You don't.
I just remember this one comedian where it's like you can summarize like Russian literature in like 3 emojis. It's like vodka bottle, Russian flag, sad face.
There you go.
So that's my.
Well, there's a lot going on there, but we're not going to dive into that.
No, that's cool though.
Yeah.
I found. I don't know if this isn't. I don't know if I agree this is like a doppelganger reference per se, but something that came up when I was looking at pop culture references was Charlie Chaplin's The Great Dictator.
Ooh, yeah.
Which, if you haven't seen it, go rent it or download it.
It's so fun.
It's really funny.
It is silent.
Film. We watched it.
You know, that would turn off like pretty much 99% of people that just heard that.
Probably.
But just go watch it anyway. Open up your minds.
It's quite funny.
Yeah.
And so basically, The Great Dictator, he's mocking Hitler, and but the idea
super like that was 1939, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So this is right on the edge of like Nazi supremacy, all this like war unfolding.
And so the connection to the doppelganger double kind of comes in where basically Chaplin plays both characters where he has this one character that's like the super simple barber and then that's contrasted by like the
maniacal dictator.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's the sort of same good and evil same person playing both characters or whatever. So it's just sort of a...
We should rent that again. I love that.
Yeah,
Anyways.
That was sort of a funny...
That is a cool one.
Pop culture reference to it.
Yeah. As far as even just getting back into the more literary side of things, there was that one book I ended up reading in my Gothic fiction class. It was by a guy named James Hogg, and it's called Private Memoirs and Confessions of a Justified Sinner.
Okay.
And this was even earlier than the other ones we referenced. So this is 1824. And so essentially the lead character, Robert Ringham, who is a fanatical Calvinist, aka a self-righteous prick. He hates women. Anyways, there's a whole other whatever. But he's haunted by his second self named Gil Martin, who is essentially a shapeshifter. He assumes various identities. He's a trickster. And usually he takes on Robert's identity and commits crimes on his behalf, that type of thing.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it definitely explores themes of duality, a fractious nature of human identity, and the terror that the second half can invoke in the self and in others. So in my mind, that is just conjuring up the uncanny.
Very
right?
much so.
Yes, so this was a 1919 essay from Freud.
Sigmund Freud. Everyone knows who that guy is. He was super into his mom, and he wrote about psychology. Okay, here we go.
Yeah. So I have a cool little quote from him. Another dramatic reading. So we'll get right into it. Quote, "The subject of the uncanny undoubtedly belongs to all that is terrible, to all that arouses dread and creeping horror. It is equally certain, too, that the word is not always used in clearly definable sense, so that it tends to coincide with whatever excites dread. The uncanny is that class of the terrifying, which leads back to something long known to us, once very familiar." End quote.
Man. Yeah.
Cool, hey?
Creepy. Super. That's, yeah.
It's just, like, you get those, like, creepy violins, like the just
Which
playing
is,
in your head.
It's fun sitting here trying to, like, imagine the feeling of, of seeing something that would be described under the umbrella of the uncanny.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine turning into an alleyway and you see something, it's human but it's not, it's you but it isn't, it's alive but it's dead.
Yes.
It's like,
I
what
kind of had
is it? Like,
almost a similar experience the other day when I was at home. And I happened to, I had talked to my mom actually recently, and she was, she had just hurt herself. I can't remember. It was her back. She had like these crazy muscle spasms, and so she was basically bedbound. And I just hung up with her on the phone, and then literally less than 5 minutes, I was looking out the front door, and I saw her walking down the street away from me. And just as I looked out, she was rounding the corner.
Yeah.
Didn't see her face, but I saw the back of her head, I saw her jacket, I saw her jeans, I saw her.
And it just looked just like...
And I had to call her right back, and I was like, "Mom, are you on a walk right now? Like, what is going on? You're hurt."
Yeah.
And she was like, no, not walking. And I was like, "Hey, this is freaky. I don't even want to tell you what I just saw."
That was also right when you were in the heat of researching doppelgangers.
Yeah.
But the power of suggestion. But at the same
Yeah.
time, but at the same time though, like it's like that was one of those situations where it's like you turned and just in a split second you were like, what?
I didn't really know what
right?
I totally did. I literally turned my head, like went like boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
And like it was weird. And I just had this really unsettled feeling. So that to me is a very like toned down version of what the uncanny can. It's a feeling incited by usually a visual, right?
Right. Yeah,
So,
I
yeah,
would
a
say
sensation.
I would say that's pretty toned down.
Yeah, it
Because,
is.
I mean, that's sort of
But
like
I was
almost-
definitely a little bit in the back of my head. I was like, "Oh, hope
Right.
nothing bad happens in the next couple days."
But
or
that's like an
weeks or
Emily
whatever.
Saji account
Right.
where it's not like you saw yourself
It's not fatal.
walking down the road.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I can't say I've ever encountered anything like that before. Like, where I've thought I've seen myself or seen somebody that even looks like me. People will come up to me and be like, "Oh, like, I just saw your doppelganger. I just saw your twin." Or, like, people have said that to me before. Like, you look so familiar.
Yeah.
Never seen anybody that looks remotely like me, other than my dad.
So subjective, too.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. Even
Anyway.
what your sister was saying about that actress, it's like, no, you really don't look like her.
No,
Even though
yeah,
all the kids in her
yeah.
classroom were telling her that.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah.
Hey, Kate.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, moving on, I guess, from the uncanny, we're still in the literary realm, I would say. We do have elements. We've talked about dualism all throughout the show, right?
Right.
And I think another sort of... We're definitely straying away from the realm of the doppelganger, per se.
We're trying to work out the explanation for it now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just like, we're not moving away from it per
We're not-
se.
Yeah, we're not moving away...
But it's just like, I like this realm of the Freud's uncanny because I think that has a big part to, that's a huge part of it. So like,
Yeah.
coming back to just sort of like...
And a huge part of, like, exactly, sorry.
No, go
sorry
ahead.
to interrupt
No,
you.
not at all.
But, like, a huge part of how this becomes a facet of horror in culture.
Right.
So,
Yes.
yes, because, like, what if, like, I've seen accounts from someone that has schizophrenia where they're like, "Oh, it's just walking in the hall, I sat on a bench and I looked beside me and, I saw myself sitting beside me and they kind of waved and they were very friendly and it was fine. Like, that to me is completely different than this other context where it invokes this feeling of dread.
Right.
And that to me is almost like a signal of the unconscious or subconsciousness to the conscious mind that's saying, like, something is not right here. Right?
Yeah.
And when you have mental illness, a lot of times you don't get those signals.
Right.
You don't get those warnings.
No, they'll manifest in different ways.
Not to say that I'm an expert in mental illness.
No, we're not at all. But obviously, looking into this, a lot of what comes up for is based on like neuroscience and psychology and things like that.
Yeah.
Freud and psychology being in the earlier stages of it, the idea of the uncanny gets me going. It always makes me think of Frankenstein and
it
sort
does.
of these earlier stages of like
the uncanny, the other.
Yeah, the other.
The monstrous.
Right.
And so that, again, you do, the idea that Frankenstein, like you mentioned, can be interpreted as an example to, like, he is uncanny in the sense that he is a reflection of humanity, but in a grotesque way.
Right.
That's where the horror sort of resides.
It's almost like it's a reflection of it was a pop culture reference to society's reflection of what they feared in themselves, right?
Yeah.
Of what they could become, or what, if their humanity was lost, or what their concept of humanity was, right?
Or if anything happened to defy the boundaries of what is considered human. Because we do have a humanist narrative. I don't want to really dive right into the whole spiel of that, but basically does kind of correspond to this idea that humans are at the top spot, and then there's like this sort of like hierarchy of existence, and that there's these separations, these boundaries, and then there's the realm of the animal, there's the realm of the human, and how and the realm of the dead, the realm of the alive. It depends on these binaries, and if you deconstruct the binary, then you're almost deconstructing their reality and the safety of that. So
yeah, totally.
That's why Frankenstein had to die.
Exactly.
Like, you have to restore those boundaries.
Right, you have to restore order. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yes.
How did the Island of Dr. Moreau end again? I don't know why that made me think of that.
Pendrick. Pendrick was his name. He ended up going back to England, and he was just never the same.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I love that book.
Yeah. I don't know why that made me think of that, but I was just like, how did that end again?
Restoring the boundaries, because, vivisection, the idea that the animal and the human are combined.
Yeah.
And, he was the only one, I think, that made it off the island, or one of the only ones.
Right.
And then he goes back and he's like basically saying like, I'm haunted forever. Yep. I can't
Disturbed.
Can't unsee anything that I just saw.
Yeah. But I mean, so just to finish like that thought though on the uncanny, it's the idea of the double being an exact, like it's yourself, it's a double, it's you. In comparison to say like the Jekyll and Hyde, where it's a monstrous version, or like, where the Frankenstein is like the uncanny human, but it's not like a double of an individual. That's interesting to me in terms of like tying into Freud's psychology, that like these if someone say like someone had murdered somebody, like the idea of the subconscious, and you end up seeing your double, like that makes sense to me. Like it's tied into your own personal self-conscious. That's why you see yourself rather than a monster, or rather than something else. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, like someone who's committed a monstrous crime.
Right.
And then they...
Yeah, like that's why you would see yourself. It might not be a monstrous crime. It could be anything. It could be any type of stress or
some
guilt
sort of
or
sin
psychological
or something. Yeah.
Like impact.
Okay.
So like maybe Catherine the Great was in the same position, like Abe Lincoln, first term, under a lot of stress. You know what I mean? Like where it's like these things within the self. That I don't know if I'm suggesting if it manifests physically, like it was an actual double, or if it's just psychological. I think most scientists would lean to the psychological only.
Yeah.
Schizophrenia, the whole camp. Yeah. But I don't. I lean the other way. Because that doesn't account for the deaths. Yeah. Anyway, that was just my sort of long-winded finale to my thoughts on Freud and the uncanny. But anyway.
The uncanny. Yeah.
So
from there, literary theories. We had sort of a touch on Descartes' mind-body dualism.
Did we?
Well,
I don't think we did.
No, we were just talking about dualism. We weren't talking about mind-body.
Yeah, which is basically just mind-body dualism. Like your consciousness can exist separately from your body.
Which is an excellent lead in to our theory on bilocation.
Indeed it is.
Yes.
Okay, kick that off. Let's do it. Bilocation.
Bilocation. So it's the idea that the mind can manifest itself in a physical or semi-physical form due to psychic effort of the individual, whether that's intentional or not. As we could see in the case of Emily Saji, if you want to include this in the bilocation, she was definitely not aware that she was doing this or that the doppelganger was manifesting at all.
Yes.
And then there's other cases, right, where I have this one really interesting example from the 1600s from a nun called Maria de Agreda, or Maria of Jesus.
Okay.
Or Mary of Jesus. I've seen that version as well. I feel like that's confusing, though, because it makes me think of Mary, like the mother of Jesus. Anyway, so
there's lots of names to choose out there, people. Just pick a different name.
Right?
Right? Come on.
Yeah.
Get it together.
Anyway.
Pick a lane.
Pick a lane! Stuck with it! But this Mary, she reported that she was often transported by the aid of angels to settlements of a people called the Humanos. It's spelled with a J. I'm just going to say that's an H pronunciation, though, because it's in the New World. It's in South America.
South America, that makes sense.
Or, sorry, Texas/New Mexico. So not quite. It was of New Spain.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
So this is the age of the conquistadors, all this stuff.
Yeah.
And these Humanos Indians, which is not a politically correct term, but that is the term that they used. So anyways, they had long been requesting these missionaries, like Catholic missionaries, Christian missionaries, and they wanted protection from these Apaches. And essentially, they were kind of starved of this until this guy, it was a friar, a Franciscan friar named Juan de Salas.
Nice. Good pronunciation.
Juan de Salas.
All that Spanish paid off. And
Cici.
can't remember anything else. Oui.
That's Spanish, right? No?
Yeah, shout out to Quebec.
But anyway, so this friar, he went and visited them in 1629 to find that they were already practicing Catholicism.
Oh my gosh, that's right. Bizarre. I forgot about this.
Christianity, sorry.
Christianity,
if it was Franciscan, then it wouldn't have been Catholic.
Is that right?
Oh, shoot.
We're messing this up.
Oh,
anyway,
gosh.
It doesn't matter. They
Whatever.
were practicing
They're practicing
a sect of
Christianity.
Christianity.
They had the iconography, they didn't have the Bible, but they had like verses and they had like all this knowledge. And essentially they said that an angel had visited them. And then I guess they eventually put it together that it was this Mary, or Maria de Agreda, that was in Spain. She never went to the New World at all.
No.
But there was some sort of crazy thing. So yeah, so this bilocation, it definitely has some religious connotations to it. Yeah, and then it also has just purely just cultural, like what we're talking about with.
So like she straight up said that she was projecting herself there. She was like
the way that it was phrased was that with the aid of angels, so with the aid of God, she was able to.
Right.
But
that's sort of similar to the story. Actually, I don't think it's in the notes here, but we listened to it, and I took it down in some of my written notes before we prepped our actual show notes. That one with the Australian guy and his friend. Remember that? Where he basically, that's okay, we're going to stop. Amber's going to open her drink. It's fine.
It didn't explode.
It didn't explode. Oh my God.
I was so worried it was going to explode.
No, but it reminded me of that story where I believe it was an Australian, possibly New Zealand. Don't get mad at me out there, Australian and New Zealand listeners, for mixing the two up.
Flight of the
because
Conchords.
Nobody specified, I don't think, so I'm just sort of guessing. Anyway, he told a story about when he was a kid, laying in his bed, and woke up to see his friend sitting at the end of his bed. Yes. And he was about, 10, 12 years old, something like that.
This was Australian.
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah.
And he sat up and he was like, at first he thought it was his sister. I think that's what his sister or something like that.
And it was actually his friend.
It was actually his friend. But his friend was miles and miles away, different town at his house. Mm-hmm. Couldn't have been his friend, but it was. And he sat up and he was like, whatever his name was, like, is that you? Is that you? And his friend's looking at him, rocking back and forth and holding his arm and like saying, my arm, like, help me, please help me.
Spooky.
And what does he do? So he runs into his parents' room. He's like, I'll get help. Mm-hmm. Runs into his parents' room. They don't believe him at all because I guess this had happened before, or night terrors or whatever.
Oh.
They were just kind of no-nonsense parents is how he described it. Mm-hmm. And it was the middle of the night, so they were like, shut the heck up and go back to bed. Goes back to his room, friend is gone. Few weeks later, or whatever it was, a week later, he ends up, I think it was summertime, so they were back at school, and or something like that. He was reacquainted with his friend, hadn't seen him for a while, and sure enough, arm was broken.
Freaky.
Couldn't come out to play because his arm was broken. Same arm. That ties directly into bilocation theory. Like, how could he have seen his friend who wasn't there, who had, they were very similar to the Emily Saji. She wasn't aware of it, but possibly like projecting some sort of energy that was like manifesting in a doppelganger at his friend's house. It found its way to a space where it knew it would be listened to or whatever.
They had a psychic connection.
They had a psychic connection.
Sense.
So I don't know whether you believe that story or not. I personally do, the way, like,
I totally forgot about that one.
Yeah, that was a cool one.
That was neat.
It's very similar to the Emily Saji case, right?
Very.
But anyway.
Yeah, bilocation. So I got 3 really cool stories from that.
Yeah. Moving on to the next one, though. Or do you want to? Or do you have another one?
No, I just don't want to move on to this one because it's so, like, I feel like it's kind of like a burst your bubble type of thing.
We're just going to rip through it quick, though.
Yeah. It's the psychological theory, the scientific model.
Boo.
Hey,
No,
we're
I'm just
not. Don't be mad at us, Chris Cogswell, please.
No, I'm just kidding.
No.
It's important to be objective, and obviously, like, for the most part, I'm going to say, in my personal opinion, 99.99% of accounts probably fall under this camp.
Yes, I think so too. But we'll explain why the other 1% may not.
Yeah.
So, the psychological model, there's definitely, in neuroscience, there's been some theories. You're choking, you're dead, you're dying.
I'm good.
All right, he's good. So it basically is this condition called hiatoscopy. Hitoscopy?
How do you keep getting these, like, really hard words? How come I don't get these
doing
hard
it to
words?
myself.
You keep writing these in.
I don't know.
You should transfer these over to my section of the notes here.
So be like, okay, now we're on to hard words.
Not that I can
just
do
take
it.
Yeah.
No, I suck at it too. Keep
I
going.
know, it's hiatoscopy. That's what I'm going to go with.
Okay.
So it's a subcategory of otoscopy,
Okay.
which is kind of defined as it's a scientific equivalent to the out-of-body experience, or the experience in which an individual perceives the surrounding environment from a different perspective, either from outside his or her own body, or viewing one's own self, that type of thing.
Right, okay.
So this hiatoscopy is the hallucination of one's own image at a distance. So again, like
Through
that
the
kind
crowd
of
or whatever
exactly,
it may- yeah, through the
Haven't you
window.
ever had that happen to you, where you're like, wait, what, and then it's just lost, and then you
I
don't know.
I feel like that happens to me, but it's always with deja vu and other
Oh
things.
yeah,
But not with, like,
you're like, I feel like I've been here before.
visuals per se. But anyway.
So anyways, this hiatoscopy, it also has an inverse actually called negative hiatoscopy. So basically, this is where the individual is unable to see themselves reflected in mirrors or other surfaces.
That's just bizarre.
Isn't that crazy?
How is that even possible?
I would love to be a doctor and literally sit someone in front of a mirror and be like, okay,
Give
so what do you see in there?
hitoscopy.
I'm seeing you, and I'm seeing me behind you.
Okay, wait
so
a
what
second.
are you seeing?
Could this is off tangent, different episode type stuff.
Off
but
tangent?
Off course, off everything, on a tangent.
Huge tangent. Okay.
But that makes me
He's
think, it's
going
like,
for
wait
it.
a second here. Could that tie into, like, vampires? People not being able to see themselves in a mirror? Think they're a vampire?
Ooh, yeah.
Anyway, side note, different episode. But that just made me
Cool.
think of that.
I never
Can't see
really-
yourself in a mirror. That's weird.
So, yeah.
Anyway, keep going.
Anyways, usually this disorder is caused by damage to the brain, whether
Okay.
it's through trauma or a tumor growth or even just, it can be an associative symptom of schizophrenia or epilepsy.
Right.
So again, all neurological disorders.
Right.
And yeah, so, oh, and again, yeah, so infection as well, cerebral infection. So things like meningitis, intoxications, generalized epilepsy, I already mentioned.
Yep.
But this is from a Brain Research Review article. I really had to dig deep for this because I was like, I don't want to just go Wikipedia.
No. Yeah,
is not-
we've got, like, legit peer-reviewed sources for this
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
So there is a real-life example from Dr. Peter Brugger, and this is, or Brugger.
Okay.
This is a 21st century, oh my god. 2006. Him and his colleagues described the case of a man who actually experienced 5 doubles.
Interesting.
Yes. And they located, the source, which was a tumor in his insular region of the temporal lobe.
Right.
So yeah, definitely a deformity of the brain causing this. And then again, like, when I was researching this, you went on the Charlie Chaplin tangent. I'm going on the Natalie Portman tangent.
Okay.
Well, it's not even a tangent because it's totally relevant. But Black Swan, right?
Ah.
She sees her double so many times in that movie.
Yeah.
I love that movie so much. It's so creepy. But yeah, she has definitely some sort of psychological affliction that can be interpreted as form of autoscopy. And it is the dark inverse of her repressed self is kind of how I interpret it. And then you get, what's the other actress from that 70s show? She's in there.
Oh, Mila Kunis.
Yes. And she does represent kind of another inverse, but then there's just so many layers to that movie too.
Yeah.
Great movie. I want to watch it again now.
Yeah.
So freaky. But, again, we run into some issues with this model, right?
Yeah.
It explains a lot. It does not explain everything.
No, because obviously... Yeah, I mean, there's a difference between taking a case modern day and being able to put somebody through a CAT scan and whatever else and being able to locate
identify
an actual
physical
source.
Abnormality.
The thing is that for a lot of these cases, especially the historical ones, obviously these medical practices weren't available, but they didn't die from brain hemorrhaging, or they didn't have a stroke. They didn't die from...
What if they did?
Well, the Catherine the Great may have.
That is
Catherine the
pretty
Great may have
ambiguous.
had a stroke, but obviously Abe Lincoln got shot. Percy Shelley died in a boating accident. There's numerous other accounts where it's like, assassinations or just mysterious unexplained deaths or what have you. So I feel like science is always trying to put... We just as humans in general, we want to put things in a box. Right, we want to know things.
We want to categorize.
So whether you're a pure scientist and you don't believe in religion, or whether you're just like a pure preacher and you don't believe in science, it doesn't matter. It's the same because you're putting something in a box where you think you can understand it. Right?
It's a belief system.
It's a belief,
epistemological framework.
Right, exactly. So,
but again, running into some of the limitations of this, right?
Right.
The idea that this can explain cases of repeated run-ins with one's own doppelganger, or even say maybe one instance, does not explain people seeing other people's doppelganger and for mass sightings like the Emily Sagy case, right? And that to me is the ultimate where the boundary can be drawn, right? Because like we said, it can probably cover close to 99% of what we're talking about, right? With people seeing things that maybe aren't there.
Right.
But... there's always that 1%.
Yeah, there's because there's no way the entire school has a mental issue, or are under some sort of hypnosis, or are experiencing mass hysteria, or whatever you want to call it. And that's what some people, again, tying back to Mothman, just random reference, but that's what one of the theories was there. Like a lot of it was just sort of, it became this sort of almost like a mass hysteria type situation going on.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the case for anything like this.
No.
Definitely not. And obviously Catherine the Great, same thing. Like, she didn't see it. She was alerted of it being there, and she runs in and sees it. Her servants were disturbed. They were like, why are you here? You should not be here.
Yeah.
I wonder which would be more frightening, like, to me. Like, if I'm sitting in bed and someone comes down the stairs and says, like, you're outside right now.
Yeah.
Which would be more scary, that or me walking outside and seeing myself there?
I think you seeing yourself.
You think so?
Yeah. I think it would be frustrating if someone else ran in and told you that they saw you, and then what if you couldn't?
It's like not there.
Yeah, because then you'd be like, I don't believe you, or I want to believe you, but I can't because I didn't see it, or whatever. And
it's both disturbing, obviously. I really hope I don't see my doppelganger after doing this type of...
No. Let's hope it's not like the little fairy you say where you start talking about them and they start messing with you.
Yeah, like during the Ogopogo episode, we went to the...
Yeah, we were talking to Coralie, and she was telling us
and she was like, yeah, you talk about things too much, and all of a sudden you're...
She's like, we already have pencils
stationery supplies start disappearing.
Exactly, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah. Oh, anyway, we're off topic here.
Yeah, so I feel like that pretty much wraps up. Like, there are some other syndromes that have kind of been reworked over the years, like things like the syndrome of subjective doubles that was coined in, was it 1976 or 78? Sorry, by George Christodoulou.
Christodoulou. What a name.
What is that? That's like Greek?
I don't know.
Something like that. And yeah, he described a case of an 18-year-old girl who claimed that her neighbor had physically transformed into the patient's double. So that to me is just total, like,
Yeah.
some sort of.
You know, I guess as we're coming down to the end here, what's your take? You know, what do you think for the people who are clearly not like afflicted by some sort of like an ailment? Mm-hmm. You know, if you believe
there's like a one-off,
like if you believe the Abe Lincoln account, if you believe the Catherine the Great or something like or those ones, what's your take?
I kind of tend to believe in the psychic manifestation theory.
Okay.
A little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know though, because like I kind of go back and forth between the idea that it comes from within versus something existing from without, and that's kind of messing with the person, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
You know, there was one other theory, sort of. It's
Yeah.
not really a theory that's out there per se, but I kind of like tied it in. And it's just sort of like the idea of multiple lives. So like not necessarily multiple lives in the sense that like Buddhism thinks of it, where you're reincarnated as something else, but multiple lives. And I suppose this sort of crosses over into like the idea of not only multiple lives, but multiple dimensions. So there's multiples of you existing in an infinite layers of alternate dimensions where I'm sitting here saying this exact thing right now, but I'm 2 seconds forward and my hair's a little longer, whatever. Right? It's like slightly different.
Yeah.
And that's how some people account for deja vu and like there's theories on that. But like the multiple lives theory is like an actual theory that psychologists have tested. And this starts all the way back with Freud, where like with hypnosis and stuff. So like hypnotizing people and getting them to try to remember past lives. And people would like recount all this information and like past life stuff that would be like tied to different people. And some of it could be corroborated.
Oh, okay.
So it's definitely like pseudoscience, but just the idea of like maybe there being not only multiple lives, but multiple selves existing at different points in time or different dimensions. The only question with that to me is why the heck would this alternate self or alternate
why would they appear
version,
when they do?
why would it want to kill you? For what? Or like why would it want to cause you harm? Like why? You know, like what would be the point? Why would you want to hurt yourself? And why would it be crossing over at all? Why would there be an interdimensional point where something crosses over and it's you and it messes with you? Why?
Yeah.
Now the question why is redundant in all this kind of stuff because it's
but is it actually messing with you or is it just presenting itself and then
you end
the
up
interpretation is that
right?
And then who knows, maybe.
But why appear at all? Is my point.
True.
Like why appear at all?
Is it coincidental? Is it?
So I feel like it could be because I feel like that's a lot of the things where because I believe in interdimensionality and we've talked about that like Skinwalker Ranch and I finished off the Ogopogo episode with sort of this random obscure theory at the end.
Yeah.
But it's sort of tied into the idea that like there's hotspots around the world where people see things or whatever, but that doesn't necessarily tie into this with like hotspots because it's just individualized per person.
Yeah.
But the idea that that there's these points where things can cross over. There's these ways in which we can.
They're able to sort of like jump over the different pages of the book, kind of like that are unfolding and kind of. That's
the only question is how does that tie into people dying from it? I don't get that.
Yeah. It's almost as if
it's sort of like
maybe a bit more of a religious aspect or like a spiritual, like it is a death omen, a spirit of some of yourself,
right?
But exactly what you're saying, like premonition, like I like the idea of the echo too, the idea that we're just some like the Vardoger and the Einatun, Einatun. The Finnish one, whatever that was, but how those aren't necessarily malevolent, right? So not all these come with these sort of bearings of death,
right?
But the majority do. But as far as that kind of covers paranormal theories. Like there was this one quote from Catherine Crowe. She's a researcher in this area, and she kind of observed that doppelgangers. This is a quote from Atlas Obscura. The doppelganger is often said to appear as one sleeps or falls ill. This has led to the belief that when our bodies can no longer hold on so tightly, our spirits may be free to wander.
Interesting.
So, yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I feel like that sums up a lot.
Yeah.
Like, the body and the spirit, the idea of dualism, because that's the theme of the week, right?
Right.
The idea that maybe perhaps they aren't as bound to one another as we think.
Totally.
The only thing I have with that whole interdimensional theory thing is, like, if everyone else can come and go, why can't we come and go?
Yeah.
What the heck, man? How did we get gypped like that? Like, come on.
No doubt.
But
Although maybe you wouldn't want to.
maybe.
Tough to say.
Just like the X-Files episode last night, where the guy was like, I've seen a time where history exists no more. I've seen a time where you can go and see the end of days, and I don't want that to exist.
Right.
What episode was that? That was season 4, right?
I can't remember the title.
Wow,
Earlier
we're just
episode.
X-Files fanatics.
Clearly, that's the third X-Files reference
like-
in this episode, so.
I feel like X-Files is sort of like subtly guiding our episode picks. Right?
I feel like it's subconsciously
we've
guiding
even-
yours.
I
That's
don't
for
want to
sure.
like spoil anything, but we've even kind of toyed with the idea of doing a pyrokinesis episode, and then that episode we watched last night, definitely the idea of like sub-zero freezing technology,
Yeah, for
and then
sure, for sure.
bursting into flame as
Totally.
like a alternate catalyst. Anyway, catalyst. Oh, gosh.
Catlass.
Catalyst. Woo. Anyways,
Anyway,
so that kind of wraps up theories for me.
yeah.
Do you have any other like?
I feel like
Closing thoughts,
I feel like
or-
I'm kind of riding with you. Like I feel the same way. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the interdimensionality aspect to it is like it's interesting, and I'm kind of my mind goes there for sure, but it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense as in terms of like, you know, why is an exact copy of yourself.
Right.
And then in other circumstances, like we might think of other things as being interdimensional, but it's not like always doppelgangers, right? It's like, you know, some people think Sasquatch is
Orbs.
interdimensional, or it's orbs, or it's whatever
Or
it may be,
it's
right? Or
actual skinwalkers,
yeah,
or
right?
something,
Or it's the Bermuda Triangle, and
Yeah.
you know, and things disappear or whatever. So it's kind of this like super broad category. Mm-hmm. I think I'm kind of, I'm kind of lost with this one. I do not have like normally with most of these I come down and I'm like, yep, I have a theory.
You got your opinion.
I do not really have a theory for this one.
Yeah.
Because they're so different. Like the Emily Sudgy, everyone else sees it, she doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Catherine the Great sees it, her servants also see it, so that's both. And then the Percy Shelley, he's the only one that sees it.
Well, there was an instance where Mary Shelley had a dream in which the doppelganger appeared, I think,
Okay.
but that was that could have just been a dream too, you know.
I feel like that type of thing corroborates it, though, possibly, right? Because
Yeah.
there's, you know, they spend a lot of time together sharing brainwaves, and she ends up having a dream about it. I definitely believe in it. I definitely believe that these things have happened to a lot of people. Most of them are accounted
it's
for
not-
by the psychological, like medical
But not
reasons
all of
why,
them.
but not all of them by any means. And
Yeah. Cool.
Beware out there, people. If you see your own doppelganger in a mirror,
Yeah, that's kind of a bad thing.
yeah.
So, yeah, end of show cleanup. I guess, folks, that's about wraps it up.
That
But first, we want to give a big shout out to Rob from Our Strange Skies, as well as Angelo from Double Density Pod. Thank you both for your awesome reviews. As well, we had Big Brother B up there this week too, so thanks, bro. We appreciate that.
Definitely. And a big thanks to Desdemona/Sprinkleface/Melinda for your lovely review and some really amazing new artwork that we will be rolling out really soon on pins, shirts, stickers, and much more. So stay tuned for that.
So excited about that. And as well, all of the awesome sound effects you heard tonight are courtesy of freesound.org. Thank you. They're awesome. It's a great collective. Otherwise, yeah, if you are loving the show, please leave us a rating review on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. We always appreciate those. As well, you be sure to check out the awesome books that we'll be rolling out this week, all doppelganger related.
Yeah.
And as well, we are revamping the bookstore so we can feature Amber's picks and Andrew's picks.
Yeah.
So you guys can duel it out and see which one will popular.
We'll see who does better.
Yeah, and as well, of course, we're going to have the blog post up and ready tomorrow, as well as our resources page, so look out for those for some really great reads and, yeah, additional resources.
Yeah,
I think that's about it, eh?
I
You
think
wanna
that's
wrap
about
up?
it. All of
Yeah.
that stuff's available at intotheportal.com.
Right.
This one's been really fun. Thank
Yes.
you so much for listening, everybody, and we will see you next week.
Yeah, next Sunday, all new episode. Stay tuned. But remember, If you happen to stumble across your own doppelganger in a dimly lit corner or a crowded street, be warned from your friends here at Into the Portal.